Hello, and thank you for listening. I'm Emma Rodriguez, and at 27, I had built a thriving career in Austin's tech scene, finally stepping out of my sister's shadow. But in the middle of a big client pitch, my chest exploded with pain, and my world collapsed. While I lay in cardiac ICU, my family posted smiling photos from Napa Valley, celebrating their perfect family without me. That's when I realized the truth. Sometimes family isn't who shares your DNA, but who shows up when it matters. It was a Tuesday morning in March when my life changed forever. I was sitting in the glass conference room at Technova, our tech startup in Austin, Texas, presenting data insights to the leadership team. I'd been working on this presentation for weeks. Revenue projections, user engagement metrics, the whole 9 yards. As you can see from Q4's conversion rates, I said, clicking to slide 12. We're seeing a 23% increase in... The room started spinning. Just like that. 1 second I'm talking about conversion funnels. The next the walls are tilting like I'm on some twisted carnival ride. I gripped the edge of the conference table. Sorry, I just need a... Then my chest exploded. Not metaphorically, it literally felt like someone had detonated a bomb inside my ribcage. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. The faces around the table blurred together like watercolors in the rain. I remember my laptop sliding across the table as I fell backward. I remember Jake, my friend from the data team, shouting my name. I remember the ceiling tiles, white and sterile, rushing past as someone, a paramedic maybe, wheeled me toward flashing lights. Then nothing. When I woke up, machines were beeping around me like some kind of electronic symphony. The smell hit me first. That sharp, antiseptic hospital smell that makes your nose burn. My mouth felt like I'd been chewing cotton balls, and there was an IV line snaking into my left arm. A nurse appeared beside my bed. Welcome back, she said, checking the monitors. You gave everyone quite a scare. I'm going to let Dr. Mitchell know you're awake. What happened? My voice came out as a croak. You collapsed at work. Your friend Jake came with you in the ambulance. He's in the waiting room. We've contacted your emergency contacts, your parents. They said they're making travel arrangements. My parents. Of course. The people I'd listed as emergency contacts out of habit. Even though we barely spoke anymore. Even though I'd moved to Texas specifically to get away from their suffocating comparisons to my perfect sister Sophia. Growing up in Cedar Falls, Iowa, we looked like the American dream family in Christmas photos. Dad, Michael Rodriguez, sold insurance and always wore pressed khakis with button-downs. Mom, Patricia, worked at the public library and baked cookies for every school function. My sister Sophia, 4 years older, was valedictorian, homecoming queen, and basically walked on water as far as my parents were concerned. And then there was me. I wasn't a bad kid. I got B's, mostly A's in my art classes. I volunteered at the animal shelter and played JV soccer. But next to Sophia's perfect report cards and her acceptance to Stanford with a full scholarship, I might as well have been invisible. Look at Sophia's science project, Dad would say every year at the school science fair, barely glancing at my volcano or solar system model. First place again. Emma, you need to apply yourself like your sister. It wasn't that I didn't try. God knows I tried. When Sophia got into Stanford, I worked my ass off to get into a good college too. When she became student council president, I ran for treasurer and won. But somehow, my achievements always came with a qualifier. Emma made honor roll, Mom would tell the neighbors, then immediately add, of course Sophia made summa cum laude at Stanford, but we're proud of both our girls. Both. Like an afterthought. The breaking point came during my high school graduation. After the ceremony, we went to dinner at Applebee's. Not exactly fine dining, but it was a celebration, right? Wrong. The entire meal centered around Sophia's new internship at a pediatric clinic. Our daughter is going to be a doctor, Dad announced to the waitress, beaming. She's already working with children at the hospital. The waitress smiled politely. Congratulations, and what about you? She looked at me in my cap and gown. Oh, Emma's going to UT Austin, Mom said quickly. It's a fine school. Not Stanford, of course, but she'll do well there. I chose the University of Texas because it was 900 miles away from Cedar Falls, far enough that I couldn't hear the constant comparisons, couldn't feel the weight of never being good enough crushing me every single day. College was different. In Austin, I wasn't Sophia's little sister. I was just Emma, the girl who could spot patterns in data that other people missed, who could turn numbers into stories that actually mattered. I switched my major from pre-med, because what else would I study, right? To computer science and statistics. And you know what? I was damn good at it. By the time I graduated, I had job offers from 3 tech companies. I chose Technova because they were small enough that I could make a real impact, and because Jake Thompson, this goofy guy from my algorithms class, had gotten hired there too. Jake became my best friend in Austin. He was the kind of guy who remembered when you had dentist appointments and brought you soup when you were sick. We weren't dating, he was gay, and I was too focused on building my career to date anyone seriously. But he was the brother I'd always wanted. My apartment in South Austin wasn't huge, but it was mine. I decorated it with local art from the monthly gallery walks, plants I somehow managed to keep alive, and a bookshelf full of data science textbooks mixed with trashy romance novels. I had hiking buddies, work friends, a pottery class on Thursday nights. I'd built a life that felt mine, but there was still this hollow space inside me. It would hit me at airports when I'd see families running to embrace each other, or when coworkers would leave early for their siblings' birthday parties. I told myself I was better off without the drama, without the constant reminder that I'd never measure up. The thing is, building a life away from your family doesn't make the family dysfunction disappear. It just gives you space to breathe while the wounds stay tender. Our communication had settled into a predictable pattern over the years. I'd call on Christmas and birthdays, listen to updates about Sophia's perfect life as a pediatric surgeon married to David, some hotshot lawyer with their 2 adorable kids. They'd ask about my job in that polite, disinterested way people ask about the weather, and I'd give equally polite, surface-level answers. "When are you going to settle down like your sister?" Mom would ask during every call. "You're 27, Emma. Your biological clock is ticking." Never mind that I'd just gotten promoted to senior data analyst. Never mind that I'd been featured in Austin Business Journal for my work on predictive analytics. In my family's eyes, I was failing at the only metrics that actually mattered: marriage, kids, and living close enough for them to show me off at church functions. The chest pains started about 3 months before my collapse. Little ones at first, just a tightness when I climbed the stairs to my apartment or pushed hard during weekend hikes in the hill country. I blamed it on stress and the Texas heat. Austin in summer will cook you alive if you're not careful. "You look tired," Jake said one day, appearing at my desk with 2 iced coffees from our favorite cart. "When's the last time you took a real weekend off?" I couldn't remember. There was always another project, another analysis to run, another reason to prove that I was valuable, that I mattered. "I'm fine," I told him, the same lie I'd been telling myself for months. "Just busy with the Morrison project." The Morrison project was our biggest client presentation of the year. If we landed it, Technova would basically double in size overnight. Our CEO had specifically asked me to lead the data analysis, and I'd been working 16-hour days to make sure it was perfect. The morning of the presentation, I woke up with what felt like an elephant sitting on my chest. I doubled up on my usual coffee, took 3 Advil, and told myself it was just nerves. Big mistake. After I collapsed in that conference room, everything became a blur of EMTs, sirens, and Jake's worried face hovering at the edge of my vision. I remember him holding my hand in the ambulance, telling me over and over that everything would be okay. When I fully came to in the cardiac ICU at Del Seaton Medical Center, Dr. Sarah Mitchell was standing beside my bed with a tablet and an expression that made my stomach drop. "Emma, I'm Dr. Mitchell, your cardiologist," she said, pulling up a chair. "We need to talk about what happened to you." The words that came out of her mouth didn't make sense at first. Acute cardiomyopathy, genetic heart condition, life-threatening arrhythmia. She might as well have been speaking a foreign language. "What does that mean?" I managed to ask. "It means your heart muscle isn't working the way it should," she explained patiently. "It's likely a genetic condition that's been developing for years, but stress and overwork triggered this acute episode. Without treatment, it could kill you." The word "kill" hit me like a slap. I was 27 years old. I ate salads and went hiking and had never smoked a cigarette in my life. How could my heart be trying to kill me? "What kind of treatment?" I asked. "We need to implant a pacemaker," Dr. Mitchell said. "It's a relatively routine procedure, but it's still heart surgery. You'll need someone here to help with your recovery, to drive you home, stay with you for at least the first week. My mind immediately went to my emergency contacts. My parents, who lived 900 miles away in Iowa, who I'd called exactly 4 times in the past year, and only on major holidays. The hospital called your parents, Dr. Mitchell continued, consulting her notes. They said they're making travel arrangements but needed some time to coordinate. While their daughter was in cardiac ICU facing heart surgery. I nodded like that was totally normal, totally fine. But something cold and familiar was settling in my chest. The same feeling I'd had at 16 when my parents drove 6 hours to help Sophia get ready for her sorority formal and left me home alone on my birthday with a grocery store cake and a promise to celebrate next weekend. That never happened. Jake appeared in my doorway an hour later, carrying a duffel bag and looking like he hadn't slept in days. "How are you feeling?" he asked, dropping into the visitor's chair like he'd been living there. "Like I got hit by a truck," I admitted. "What happened with the Morrison presentation?" Jake rolled his eyes. "Seriously? You literally had a heart attack and you're worried about work? Did we get the contract?" Richard rescheduled. "The Morrison people were more concerned about you than the presentation. They sent flowers." He nodded toward a modest arrangement on the windowsill that I hadn't noticed. That made me feel strange. Virtual strangers showing more concern than my own family. "I brought you some things," Jake continued, unzipping the bag. "Pajamas, toiletries, phone charger, and that book you've been reading. I used your spare key. Hope that's okay." The simple kindness of it made my throat tight. Here was Jake, someone I'd known for 5 years, stepping up without being asked. Meanwhile, my own parents. "Have my parents called the hospital?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer from Jake's expression. "I'm not sure," he said carefully. "The nurses would know better than me." We both knew what that meant. They hadn't called. Dr. Mitchell returned that evening with the surgery scheduler and a consent form that basically said, "We're going to stop your heart, implant a device, and restart it. Hope that's cool." "The procedure is scheduled for Thursday morning," she said. "That gives us 3 days to get your heart rhythm stabilized with medication. Do you have questions about the surgery itself?" I had a million questions, but the one that kept circling in my head was the one I couldn't ask. Why haven't my parents called? "Recovery time?" I managed instead. 2 weeks before you can drive, 4 to 6 weeks before you can return to normal activities. You'll need someone with you for at least the first week, preferably someone who can help with cooking, cleaning, getting to follow-up appointments. I nodded, already knowing Jake would volunteer even though he had his own job, his own life. That night, alone in my hospital room, with just the steady beeping of monitors for company, I finally let myself check my phone. No missed calls from Cedar Falls. No text messages asking how I was feeling. Just work emails and a notification that Sophia had posted something on Instagram. My thumb hovered over the notification. I knew I shouldn't look. Nothing good ever came from checking my sister's social media. But 3 days in a cardiac ICU with nothing but daytime TV will make you do desperate things. The post loaded, bright and cheerful on my screen. A carousel of photos from what looked like a wine country vacation. My parents, Sophia, her husband David, and their 2 kids, 7-year-old Madison and 5-year-old Tyler, grinning in front of rolling vineyards. They were in Napa Valley. While I was lying in a hospital bed waiting for heart surgery, my family was living their best life at a luxury resort, drinking wine and taking professional quality family photos. The caption made my stomach turn. Perfect family getaway. Sometimes you need to disconnect from drama and focus on what matters. How blessed, family first. Napa Valley. The timestamp showed the photos were taken yesterday, 2 days after I'd collapsed. 1 day after the hospital had called them. I scrolled through the comments. Aunt Linda, beautiful family, Uncle Tom, making memories that matter. Mom's college roommate, the Rodriguez family knows how to do it right. And my favorite, from my mom's sister, Aunt Carol. Love seeing the whole family together. You all look so happy, the whole family. As if I didn't exist. As if their daughter and sister wasn't lying in cardiac ICU, alone. But it was Sophia's response to that comment that destroyed me. "Thanks. It really is perfect when everyone can just relax and enjoy each other. No stress, no drama, just family time." No drama, no stress. I was the drama. I was the stress they needed a vacation from. I set my phone face down on the hospital tray table and stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned. I wouldn't cry. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction, even though they'd never know. But something inside me cracked that night. Not my heart, that was already broken. Something deeper. The last thread of hope I'd been carrying that maybe, when it really mattered, they'd show up for me. They wouldn't. They never would. And I needed to stop pretending otherwise. Jake arrived early the next morning with coffee and a bag of breakfast tacos from our favorite food truck. "You look like hell," he said, settling into his usual chair. "Gee, thanks. Really what every girl in a hospital gown wants to hear." He studied my face. "What happened? Did you get bad news about the surgery?" I could have lied. Could have said I was just nervous about the procedure, but Jake had been showing up for me for days, while my actual family sipped wine in Napa, so I told him the truth. He listened without interruption as I explained about the Instagram post, the comments, the casual erasure of my existence. When I finished, his jaw was clenched tight. "They're in Napa Valley," he said slowly. "Right now, while you're here." "Yep." "And they posted about no drama while you're having heart surgery." "That would be me. I'm the drama." Jake stood up abruptly and started pacing the small room. "That is the most fucked up thing I've ever heard in my life." "Jake." "No, Emma, no." He spun to face me. "That is not normal family behavior. That is cruel. You could have died on Tuesday, and they're posting vacation photos with captions about how much better life is without you there." Hearing someone else say it out loud made it real in a way that hurt worse than my actual heart condition. "I know," I whispered. He sat back down and took my hand. "You know what? Fuck them. You don't need them. We're your family now. Me, the people at work who actually give a shit about you. Everyone in your life who shows up when it matters." The surgery was scheduled for 6 a.m. Thursday. Jake took the day off work and arrived at 5:30 with my favorite smoothie and a playlist of ridiculous podcasts to distract me during pre-op. "You've got this," he said as they wheeled me toward the operating room. "And I'll be right here when you wake up." Dr. Mitchell had explained the procedure in detail. They'd make a small incision below my collarbone, thread the pacemaker leads through blood vessels into my heart, then implant the device under the skin. The whole thing would take about 2 hours. What she hadn't explained was how strange it would feel to wake up with a machine keeping you alive. The pacemaker was smaller than I'd expected, about the size of a stack of $3 silver, but I could feel it under my skin like a foreign object my body hadn't quite accepted yet. "How do you feel?" Dr. Mitchell asked during her post-op check. "Weird," I said honestly, "like I'm part robot now." She smiled. "That feeling will fade. Your heart rhythm looks perfect. The device is doing exactly what we hoped it would do." Jake had turned my hospital room into mission control while I was in surgery. Flowers from my work team, cards from my hiking group, a care package from my Thursday pottery class that I didn't even know had my last name. It was overwhelming and wonderful and made me realize how much community I'd actually built in Austin. "Your phone's been buzzing," Jake said, nodding toward my bedside table. I didn't answer it, but I saw the caller ID. "Your parents, finally." I stared at the phone like it might bite me. After 4 days of silence, now they wanted to call? "You don't have to answer," Jake said quietly, but I did have to answer. Not for them, for me. I needed to know if they had an explanation, an excuse, anything that might make their absence make sense. I picked up the phone and called them back. "Emma," Mom's voice was bright, cheerful, like nothing had happened. "Honey, we've been trying to reach you. How are you feeling?" The casual tone made me want to scream. "I'm recovering from heart surgery, Mom." "How do you think I'm feeling?" A pause. "Heart surgery? The hospital said you collapsed at work, but they made it sound like exhaustion or dehydration." "I've been in cardiac ICU for 4 days," I said slowly. "They implanted a pacemaker this morning because my heart was failing. Didn't anyone call you back for updates?" Another pause. "Well, we were traveling, sweetheart. It's been hard to get clear information. Traveling to Napa Valley for wine tastings and family photos while their daughter faced life-threatening heart surgery." "I saw the Instagram posts," I said. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "Emma," Mom said finally, her voice smaller now. "We didn't think The hospital made it sound like it wasn't serious. You didn't think to call me directly, to call the hospital back, to ask for details? We should have, Dad's voice came through. He must have been on speaker. We made a mistake, honey, a big mistake. The apology I'd waited my whole life to hear felt hollow now. Too little, too late. Where are you now? I asked. We're still in California, Mom admitted. But we can fly back tomorrow if you need us. If I needed them, after heart surgery, as if my needing them was optional, inconvenient. Don't bother, I said. I have people taking care of me. People who actually showed up. Emma, please, Dad said. We love you, we're your family. No, I said quietly. Jake is my family. The people who've been here every day, who brought me food and books and flowers, they're my family. You're just people I happen to share DNA with. I hung up before they could respond. Jake squeezed my shoulder. I'm proud of you. For what? For standing up for yourself. For recognizing what you deserve. I spent 5 more days in the hospital, and not once did my phone ring with a call from Cedar Falls. Jake visited every day, sometimes twice. My coworkers took turns stopping by. Dr. Mitchell checked on me during rounds, even when she didn't need to. David Chen, my primary nurse, brought me extra pudding cups and updates on his 3 cats. These people, virtual strangers a week ago, had become more of a support system than my biological family had ever been. The day before my discharge, something unexpected happened. My phone rang with a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was familiar. Cedar Falls, Iowa. Emma, this is Grandpa George, my maternal grandfather. I hadn't talked to him in months, maybe a year. He was 82, lived alone in the house where my mom grew up, and had always been the quiet one at family gatherings. Grandpa, I said, genuinely surprised. How did you get this number? Your friend Jake looked me up online and called me, he said. He was worried that no one in your family knew what really happened to you. Jake had called my grandfather. Without asking me, without making a big deal about it, he'd reached out to the one family member who'd always been kind to me, even if we weren't close. That boy gave me quite an earful about your parents and sister, Grandpa George continued, his voice gruff with emotion. I had no idea you were in the hospital. No idea about the heart surgery. I am so sorry, kiddo. It's not your fault, Grandpa. The hell it isn't. I raised your mother better than that. Or thought I did. He was quiet for a moment. Can you talk? I mean, really talk? Because I have some things to say about this family. For the next hour, my 82-year-old grandfather proceeded to absolutely demolish my parents and sister with a combination of disappointed wisdom and righteous fury that I'd never heard from him before. I've been watching this dynamic for years, he said. The way they treat you like you're not good enough, like Sophia's the only daughter that matters. I kept my mouth shut because I thought it wasn't my place to interfere. But this, leaving you alone in the hospital while they're off playing happy family, this crosses every line. I'm used to it, Grandpa. Well, you shouldn't have to be used to it. You deserve better. You've always deserved better. His voice cracked slightly. I should have said something years ago. I should have stood up for you. Hearing validation from a family member, even one I barely knew, felt like water after years of drought. I want to do something, Grandpa George said. I can't undo 27 years of them making you feel invisible, but I can do something now. Will you let me? 3 days later, Grandpa George showed up at my apartment door with a suitcase and a determination that reminded me why I'd always liked him, even if we didn't talk often. You shouldn't be alone right now, he said simply, setting his bag down in my living room. Jake seems like a good kid, but he's got his own job, his own life. I'm retired and stubborn, so I'm staying until you're back on your feet. Having my grandfather there was unexpected. He made terrible coffee but excellent scrambled eggs. He watched my murder mystery shows without complaining and learned how to use my streaming services with the determination of a man conquering Mount Everest. Most importantly, he listened. We talked about everything I'd never been able to say to my parents. About feeling invisible, about the constant comparisons, about building a life in Texas just to escape the suffocating dynamic in Cedar Falls. Your parents aren't bad people, he said one evening as we sat on my small balcony watching the sunset. But they made bad choices. They let one child shine so bright that they couldn't see the other one was brilliant in her own way. I don't know if I was ever brilliant. Are you kidding? He looked at me like I was crazy. Emma, you moved halfway across the country and built a whole career in something nobody in our family even understands. You're making good money, you've got friends who love you, you're independent and strong and kind. That's pretty damn brilliant if you ask me. It was the first time in my adult life that a family member had seen me, really seen me, for who I was instead of who I wasn't. On his last day in Austin before flying home, Grandpa George handed me an envelope. Don't open it until I leave, he said. And don't argue with me about what's inside. After I dropped him off at the airport, I sat in my car in the parking garage and opened the envelope. Inside was a deed and a letter written in his careful handwriting. Emma, the letter began, I'm giving you my ranch in the hill country. It's been in our family for 60 years, 50 acres of the most beautiful land in Texas. Your grandmother and I always planned to pass it down to family, but we wanted it to go to someone who would appreciate it, someone who understands what it means to create your own life. The deed is already signed and notarized. The lawyer's information is attached. It's yours, free and clear, no strings attached. But if you want my advice, and you don't have to take it, I think you should consider living there, at least part-time. You've built a good life in Austin, but that ranch, it's a place where you can breathe, where you can be exactly who you are without having to prove anything to anyone. I should have given this to you years ago. I should have stood up for you years ago. This is my way of saying that I see you, Emma. I've always seen you. And I'm proud of the woman you've become. Love, Grandpa George P.S. There's something else I need to do, and I'm probably too old to care about the consequences. The last line puzzled me until 3 days later when my phone started blowing up with calls from my parents and Sophia. I ignored the first dozen, but eventually curiosity got the better of me. Emma, thank God, Mom said when I finally answered. We need to talk. Your grandfather called us, and he was very upset. What did he say? He said some things about how we've treated you over the years, about the hospital situation. He was quite vocal about his disappointment in us. Vocal, knowing Grandpa George, that was probably an understatement. He also mentioned something about giving you the ranch, Dad added. Emma, that's a very valuable piece of property. We think maybe he was confused, or maybe you misunderstood. I didn't misunderstand anything, I said coldly. He gave me the ranch because he thinks I'll take care of it, and because he's proud of who I've become. Novel concept, right? That's our family land, Sophia's voice cut in. She must have been on speaker too. It should stay in the main family line. Main family line. As if I wasn't part of the main family. I am family, Sophia. I'm just not your definition of the right kind of family. This is ridiculous, Sophia continued. You can't just accept a ranch because Grandpa's feeling sentimental. That land is worth over $1 million. It should be split between... Between who? I interrupted. You? The daughter who has everything handed to her? The one who posted vacation photos while I was having heart surgery? The one who literally celebrated my absence from the family? That's not what I... Yes, it is. That's exactly what you did. Perfect family getaway. Sometimes you need to disconnect from drama and focus on what matters. I was the drama, Sophia. I was dying, and you were relieved I wasn't there to complicate your perfect family narrative. The silence on the other end of the line stretched uncomfortably long. We want to make things right, Mom said finally. We want to come visit, to see you, to talk about everything. Now you want to visit. After I've inherited property. Interesting timing. That's not why. Yes, it is. You didn't care enough to visit when I was in cardiac ICU. But now that there's real estate involved, suddenly I'm worth your time. Emma, please, Dad said. We're your family. We love you. Do you? I asked. Because I've spent 27 years trying to figure out what that love looks like, and I've come up empty. Love shows up. Love calls to check if you're okay. Love doesn't need property disputes to motivate basic human decency. We made mistakes, Mom said, her voice shaking. But we can fix this. We can be better. Maybe you can, I said, but I don't need you to anymore. I figured out what real family looks like, and it's not this. It's Jake sitting in a hospital chair for 5 days straight. It's Grandpa George flying to Austin to take care of me. It's coworkers bringing flowers and nurses sharing pudding cups. and friends who show up without being asked. "So that's it?" Sophia asked. "You're just going to cut us off?" "I'm not cutting you off. I'm just not making you my priority anymore, the way you never made me yours." I hung up before they could respond, but this time it felt different. Final. Like closing a door I'd been holding open my entire life, hoping someone would walk through it. 6 months later, I was sitting on the porch of my new home. Well, my new part-time home. The ranch Grandpa George had given me was everything he'd promised. 50 acres of rolling hills, a creek that sang at night, and the kind of silence that lets you hear your own thoughts clearly for the first time in years. I'd kept my job at Technova but negotiated a hybrid schedule that let me work remotely 3 days a week. The ranch house needed some updates, but it had good bones and a view that made my chest loosen every time I saw it. Not in a heart problem way, in a coming home way. Jake visited almost every weekend, usually bringing some combination of friends from Austin and groceries I'd forgotten to buy. My Thursday pottery class had evolved into a monthly group retreat, where we'd spend weekends glazing ceramics and hiking the trails that crisscrossed the property. The best part, though, was the quiet. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't performing for anyone. Wasn't trying to prove my worth or earn approval or measure up to impossible standards. I was just Emma, living in a house that was mine, on land that was mine, with people who chose to be there because they wanted to be, not because they felt obligated. My parents had called a few more times in the months after our last conversation. Mom sent a birthday card. Dad texted occasionally about wanting to visit and talk things through. Sophia had apparently started therapy, according to a mutual family friend, and was working through some things about family dynamics. Good for her, seriously. I hoped therapy helped her figure out how to treat people better, but their personal growth wasn't my responsibility anymore. The biggest surprise came when Grandpa George called to tell me he was selling his house in Cedar Falls and moving to a senior community in Austin. "I want to be closer to you," he said simply. "You're the only family member who visits me anyway, and I'd rather spend my remaining years around people who actually show up for each other." He moved into a beautiful assisted living community about 30 minutes from my apartment, and we started having dinner every Sunday. Sometimes at his place, sometimes at the ranch, sometimes at restaurants in Austin where he'd tell embarrassing stories about my mom's teenage years to any server who would listen. "Do I ever regret giving you the ranch instead of leaving it to your parents?" he asked one evening as we watched the sunset paint the hills purple and gold. "Do you?" "Hell no. They would have sold it within a year and split the money. You're actually living here, taking care of it, making it into something special. This is what your grandmother and I always wanted, for this place to matter to someone." It did matter to me, more than I'd expected. The ranch wasn't just a house or property, or even an escape from my family drama. It was proof that someone saw value in me, trusted me with something precious, believed I deserved good things. The follow-up appointments with Dr. Mitchell became routine. Check the pacemaker, adjust medications, confirm that my heart was healing properly. The device that had felt so foreign at first became just part of me, like wearing glasses or having a birthmark. Something that made me different but not less than. "Your recovery has been remarkable," she said, during my 6-month checkup. "Physically, you're doing everything right. Emotionally, you seem different too. Calmer." She was right. The constant anxiety that had driven me to work 16-hour days, to chase achievement like it was oxygen, had faded. I still cared about doing good work, still felt proud when I solved complex problems or landed big clients. But I wasn't performing for an audience of people who'd never applaud anyway. Jake noticed it too. "You laugh more," he said one weekend as we grilled burgers on the ranch's back porch. "Like, actually laugh. Not that polite work laugh you used to do." "I feel more like myself," I admitted, "like the person I always was underneath all the trying to be what other people wanted." "And what kind of person is that?" I thought about it. Someone who likes data and hiking and terrible reality TV. Someone who's good at her job but doesn't need it to define her worth. Someone who values loyalty and showing up and making people feel seen. "Sounds like a person worth knowing," Jake said, raising his beer in a mock toast. "Yeah," I said, clinking my bottle against his. "I think she is." The hardest part of the past year wasn't the heart surgery or the family confrontations or even learning to live with a pacemaker. It was unlearning 27 years of conditioning that told me I wasn't enough. breaking the habit of measuring myself against Sophia's achievements, of seeking approval from people who'd never freely give it, of apologizing for taking up space in my own life. Some days were better than others. I'd catch myself drafting texts to my parents about work successes, then deleting them when I remembered they'd never celebrated my wins without qualifiers. Or I'd see a family on a hiking trail, parents cheering equally for both their kids, and feel that familiar pang of what I'd missed. But those moments became rarer. And when they did hit, I had people to talk to about them, not to fix them or minimize them, but to acknowledge that healing isn't linear and some wounds leave scars that ache when the weather changes. The 1-year anniversary of my collapse fell on a Tuesday, same as the original. Instead of spending it at Technova, I took the day off and drove out to the ranch. Jake met me there with coffee and breakfast tacos, and we sat on the porch talking about everything and nothing. "Any regrets?" he asked as we watched cattle graze in the distance. I was leasing the back 40 to a local rancher, Grandpa George's suggestion for maintaining the land while earning some income. "About what?" "About burning bridges with your family, about moving out here, about any of it." I considered the question seriously. A year ago, I would have said I regretted everything. Being born second, not being good enough, causing family drama by simply existing. But now, no, I said finally. I regret that it took me so long to realize I deserved better. I regret that I spent so many years trying to earn something that was never actually available. But I don't regret choosing myself for once. What would you tell someone going through something similar? Someone who feels invisible in their own family? That family isn't just about blood, I said. That you can't force people to see your worth, but you can stop dimming your own light to make their blindness more comfortable. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is save yourself. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a split second, my heart did that familiar skip. Not the dangerous kind, just the conditioned response of hoping it might be my parents reaching out with genuine care instead of obligation or property concerns. It wasn't. It was Dr. Mitchell's office, confirming my upcoming appointment. But the fact that I'd still hoped, even for a second, reminded me that healing isn't about becoming immune to hurt. It's about building a life so full of genuine love and support that the absence of toxic relationships stops defining you. That evening, as I was getting ready for bed in my ranch house, I got a call from an unknown number with a Cedar Falls area code. My first instinct was to ignore it, probably another family member who'd heard about Grandpa George moving to Texas and wanted to share their opinions about family loyalty. But something made me answer. "Emma, this is your Aunt Carol, my mom's younger sister, the one who'd commented on Sophia's Instagram post about the whole family being together." "Hi, Aunt Carol." My voice was carefully neutral. "I hope it's okay that I'm calling. I got your number from your grandfather. I wanted to apologize. That wasn't what I'd expected." "For what?" "For not knowing, for not asking questions, for going along with the family narrative that you were just difficult or distant or whatever excuse we all told ourselves." Her voice was shaky. "Your grandfather told me what really happened. About the hospital, about your heart surgery, about how nobody came, about how we all just let Sophia and your parents treat you like you didn't matter." I sat down hard on my couch. In 37 years of life, Aunt Carol had never once acknowledged that there was anything wrong with how I was treated. "I should have said something years ago," she continued. "I should have seen what was happening. I should have stood up for you. I'm so sorry, Emma. I'm so ashamed of all of us." "Carol," I said softly, using her first name instead of Aunt for the first time in my life. "Thank you for saying that, but you don't need to carry guilt for other people's choices. Don't I? I watched them treat you like an afterthought for decades and told myself it wasn't my business. That makes me complicit." She wasn't wrong, but I'd learned over the past year that accepting other people's apologies was different from making their guilt my responsibility to manage. "What's done is done," I said. "The question is what happens next. I don't know if I have the right to ask this, but could we try again? Could I try to be the aunt I should have been all along?" "I know it's probably too late, but..." "It's not too late," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. "But it has to be real. No more going along with family dynamics just to keep the peace. No more pretending the problem is my sensitivity instead of their treatment." "I understand, and Emma, I want you to know that I've always been proud of you. I know I never said it, but I was. Moving to Texas, building your career, being so independent and strong. I admired that. I should have said it out loud. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my living room, feeling something I hadn't experienced in relation to my family in a very long time. Hope. Not hope that my parents would suddenly become different people, or that Sophia would have some dramatic revelation about her behavior, but hope that maybe, one relationship at a time, some part of my biological family could be healed. Carol started calling every few weeks after that, not with dramatic gestures or attempts to fix everything at once, but with small, consistent efforts to be present. She remembered my pacemaker checkup appointments and texted to ask how they went. She sent me articles about data analysis she'd found interesting, even though she didn't really understand what I did for work. When I mentioned casually that I'd been learning to horseback ride, she spent her own money to send me proper riding boots, because safety is important. It was what I'd always wanted from my family, to be seen, remembered, prioritized in small daily ways. Not grand gestures or crisis intervention, but the steady accumulation of care that said, "You matter to me." Grandpa George, meanwhile, had become something of a local celebrity at his assisted living community. He'd started a weekly poker game and was teaching interested residents how to use smartphones to video chat with distant grandchildren. But his favorite activity was our Sunday dinners, which had evolved into larger gatherings as my Austin friend group adopted him as their honorary grandfather. "You know what I like about your friends," he said one evening as we cleaned up after hosting Jake, some work colleagues, and my pottery class friends for dinner. "They're chosen family. They show up for each other the way family should." "Is that what this is?" I asked, loading plates into the dishwasher. "Chosen family. What else would you call it? Jake's been more of a brother to you than anyone blood-related ever was. These people celebrate your successes, check on you when you're sick, share their time and energy with you because they want to, not because they have to. If that's not family, I don't know what is." He was right. Somewhere in the process of healing from my biological family's neglect, I'd built something stronger and more reliable than what I'd started with. Not as a replacement exactly, but as proof that love was possible. I'd just been looking for it in the wrong places. The second anniversary of my collapse found me in a completely different place, literally and figuratively. I was sitting in Dr. Mitchell's office for what she'd told me would likely be my last regular follow-up appointment. "Your heart function is excellent," she said, reviewing my test results. "The pacemaker is working perfectly, and you've responded better to treatment than I dared hope for when you first arrived in my ICU. So I'm normal now? You're healthy. You'll always have a heart condition that requires monitoring, but you can live a completely normal life. Travel, exercise, work, relationships, everything is back on the table." It felt surreal. 2 years ago, I'd been dying and didn't know it. Now I was healthier than I'd been in years, with a support system that would have seemed impossible when I was lying alone in that hospital bed. "Can I ask you something personal?" Dr. Mitchell said as she finished her notes. "Sure. When you first came in, you seemed isolated, anxious about family contact, worried about being alone during recovery. You're obviously in a much different place now. What changed?" I thought about how to answer that. I stopped trying to force people to love me the way I needed to be loved, and started accepting love from people who were already offering it. She smiled. "That sounds like the healthiest thing I've heard in this office in a long time." Driving home from that appointment, I called Jake to share the good news. He was at work but answered anyway because that's what Jake did. "Dr. Mitchell says I'm officially healthy," I told him. "Emma, that's amazing. We should celebrate. Dinner tomorrow night, I'll cook." "Actually, I have a better idea. What are you doing this weekend?" "Whatever you want to do." "Why?" "I want to throw a party, at the ranch, for everyone who's been part of this journey with me. A celebration of, I don't know, surviving, thriving, found family. I love it. I'll help plan." "How many people are we talking?" I started counting in my head. Jake, obviously. My work friends who'd visited during recovery. The pottery class group, Dr. Mitchell and Nurse David, if they were free. Carol, who'd become a regular presence in my life. Grandpa George and some of his poker buddies who'd become surrogate uncles. The neighbors who'd helped me learn to care for the ranch. "Maybe 25 people," I said. "Is that too many?" "For celebrating the fact that you're alive and happy?" There's no such thing as too many. The party ended up being everything I'd hoped for and more. Fairy lights strung between the oak trees, a playlist that mixed everyone's favorite songs, and a potluck dinner that showcased just how many different communities I'd become part of over the past 2 years. Grandpa George held court at a picnic table, telling embarrassing stories about my childhood to anyone who would listen. Dr. Mitchell and Nurse David compared notes with Jake about the most effective ways to motivate me to take care of myself. Carol helped coordinate the food and spent most of the evening taking pictures, like the proud family member she'd learned to become. As the sun set and people started migrating toward the fire pit Jake had built, I found myself standing on the porch, looking out at this collection of people who'd chosen to be part of my life. Good party? Jake appeared beside me, holding 2 beers. Perfect party, I said, accepting the bottle. Thank you for helping me plan it. Thank you for letting me be part of it, part of all of this. He gestured toward the group around the fire pit. You know what's funny? I don't think I've ever seen you this happy, like genuinely, unself-consciously happy. He was right. I felt lighter than I had in years, maybe ever, not because all my problems had disappeared or because I'd achieved some perfect life, but because I'd finally stopped carrying the weight of other people's inability to see my worth. Can I tell you something? I said. Something I've never told anyone? Always. I used to have this fantasy when I was a kid, that there had been some mistake at the hospital when I was born, and my real family was out there somewhere looking for me. People who would understand me and celebrate me and never make me feel like I was too much or not enough. Jake was quiet, listening. I spent so much energy trying to make my biological family into those people that I almost missed it when my real family started showing up. You, Grandpa George, Carol, everyone here tonight. You're the family I was always meant to have. I just had to stop looking backwards long enough to see what was right in front of me. For the record, Jake said, you're exactly the sister I would have chosen too. Sister. The word hit me differently than it ever had before. Not as a comparison to Sophia, not as a reminder of what I'd lost, but as recognition of what I'd found. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and I was cleaning up the remnants of the party, my phone rang. The caller ID said, Mom, and for once I didn't feel that familiar spike of anxiety or hope or dread. I answered. Emma, I hope it's not too late to call. It's fine, Mom. What's up? I saw the photos Carol posted from your party tonight. It looked lovely. You looked happy. I waited, curious where this was going. Your father and I have been talking about everything that's happened these past couple years, about the mistakes we made, about how badly we handled your hospitalization. Okay, I said neutrally. We were wondering, would you be open to us visiting, just for a day maybe? We'd like to see your ranch, meet some of your friends, try to understand the life you've built. 2 years ago, I would have said yes immediately, desperately grateful for any crumb of attention from them. A year ago, I would have said no, out of anger and self-protection. Now I considered the request on its merits. What did I want? What would be healthy for me? I'm open to it, I said finally. But there would need to be ground rules. Of course. Whatever you need. This isn't about you feeling better about your choices. It's not about rehabilitation or making amends. If you come, it's because you genuinely want to know who I am now. Not because you want to fix what went wrong or prove that you're good parents. I understand. And if you can't handle seeing that I've built a happy life without your approval, if you can't celebrate my success without comparing it to Sophia's, if you make this visit about anything other than getting to know me as an adult, then this will be the last conversation we have. Mom was quiet for a long moment. Those are fair terms, Emma, more than fair. Then yes, you can visit, but I'll plan the itinerary and it happens on my timeline. After we hung up, I sat on my porch in the quiet darkness, processing the conversation. I wasn't sure what would come of their visit, whether they were capable of the kind of relationship I'd outlined, whether I even wanted one with them anymore. But for the first time, I wasn't approaching the possibility from a place of desperation or anger. I was approaching it from strength, from knowing exactly what I would and wouldn't accept, from having a life so full that their presence or absence wouldn't define my happiness. That felt like victory. 6 months later, as I write this, I'm preparing for my parents' visit next week. Carol has offered to be a buffer if things get tense, and Jake has promised to be on standby for moral support or emergency extraction if needed. Grandpa George, with his characteristic directness, has volunteered to set them straight if they step out of line. I don't know how it will go. Maybe they've genuinely learned and grown. Maybe they're still the people who raised me to believe I was less important than my sister. Maybe it's somewhere in between. But here's what I know for certain. Their visit won't make or break me. Their approval won't validate my choices. And their disapproval won't invalidate them. I've learned the difference between being loved and being needed, between being seen and being useful, between belonging and being tolerated. I've learned that family isn't who raises you or who shares your DNA. Family is who shows up, who celebrates your wins without needing them to be bigger or smaller than someone else's, who sits in hospital chairs and brings you soup and remembers what matters to you and chooses you again and again, not out of obligation, but out of love. If you're listening to this and you feel invisible in your own family, if you're the forgotten child or the scapegoat or the one who never quite measures up, I want you to know something. You deserve better. You deserve people who see your light instead of asking you to dim it. You deserve celebrations without qualifiers, and support without conditions, and love that doesn't come with a price tag of perfect behavior. You might not find it where you're looking for it. You might have to build it from scratch with friends and mentors, and chosen siblings, and people who start as strangers and become home. That's okay. That's not settling. That's succeeding. The best families aren't born, they're built. And you're absolutely worthy of building one that sees you, celebrates you, and shows up for you when it matters. Your story doesn't end with the people who failed to love you properly. It begins with the people who choose to love you right. Trust me on this one. My pacemaker and I have learned a thing or two about what it takes to keep a heart beating strong. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, you deserve people who show up. Don't settle for anything less.